Can you explain the training that they have to go through for
It's
these kind of things?
very intensive. So we use 16 different vendors throughout the United States. So if
Okay.
somebody needs us in Northern California or Southern California or upstate New York, we have vendors that are spread out that they can go. And so when they get approved, they fill out the application with us
Mhm,
online. And then we have a police board that goes in and looks at their application.
mhm,
And we ask them, there's no wrong answer, but
mhm,
we ask them things like, if you're a small department, how close is the next department to you that has canines that you can train with? Because
mm.
how do you get better? You train with your peers.
Right.
And so if it's a small department that maybe they only have one or two canines, they may say, well, the county next door, has a canine team and they work, we can go to those trainings. And so we feel that those applying should have a little bit of skin in the game. So when we give the bulk, so we give the dog and the training, they have to supply in their vehicle a aluminum insert, like it's a roll cage.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if something happens, the dog is, safe,
Safe.
compacted in there, and a hot popper. So if your car, let's just say they've left it running, which a lot of cops do, and something faulty happens, and then the car overheats and it's
Mm,
turned off, it sets an alarm off
mm.
and lets either dispatch or that officer know, hey, there's some movement in this car and it's now 82 degrees. Now it's 88 degrees. Somebody needs, because a dog, as you know, they kind of breathe through their mouth, so they can get overheated really fast
Yeah,
and
yeah.
accidents happen. And knock on wood, we have not had one ever happen to us in the close to 400 dogs that we've given.
Right.
But again, we precautions make sure that they're protected going into it. So the department has to supply those two minor things.
Mhm,
So that could set them back $1,000 or $2,000, just
mhm.
depending on how fancy they want to go on their equipment. And then our officers talk to those officers and that command and kind of fill them out and say, okay, um, how do you feel about this? Is this a brand new uh, program you're starting, or did you lose your canine? Maybe died of old age? What are we working with here? Again, there's no
Right.
wrong answer, but and then so somebody kind of handholds them. We have these volunteers that are amazing. They've been with me since day one.
Mhm.
And one is the gentleman that you saw, Ted, that was
Yeah.
crying. And he still says, I was so down and distraught. And he said, about 2 or 3 months after the passing of Black, I get a phone call and they said, hey, there's a lady on the phone and her name's Christy Schiller and she started a charity in your honor.
Hmm.
And he said, I thought it was a joke. He
No.
said, I really didn't want to take the call. And
Wow.
so he came to meet me. He said, what made you start this? And I said,
Wait, and by the way, but at that time, had he received another dog yet, or he was working without one?
his department had already got him another dog.
Okay.
And that dog didn't work out, unfortunately. It turned on him. It was not one of ours.
Mhm,
And but again, we protect these departments. They come through us. So we have a 2-year health and working guarantee.
mm.
Uh, so that dog ended up being a little, not mentally sound
Right.
and
Had some
had bit,
behavioral issues.
right, had bit 3 other handlers in his department,
Right.
and had mauled him.
Okay.
And so they had called the vendor where they gotten the dog from, and they said, you drove off with it. It's yours now.
Oh, wow.
Well, that doesn't happen with us because we're buying a lot of dogs at a time. So if
Mhm,
anybody ever pulled that on us, we just say, well, we don't do business with you anymore.
mm,
But
mhm,
we have the luxury to do that, whereas a lot of smaller departments don't.
mhm.
They've saved their money, they work so hard, and then maybe they don't get the training that they need.
Right, which
or
shows immediately why a department should go through you as opposed
right,
to another way. Yeah, because there's a
right.
guarantee of what
Because, and we
ends up.
make sure, I mean, they fill out stats for us every
Yeah.
month. So we don't want to know that it's the judge's granddaughter that was busted with a joint. I mean, everything's coded.
Mm,
So, again, we don't know the background on the suspects, but we just want the status of the dogs.
sure.
And so, that they'll say, hey, this month in school, we found this much marijuana, and, somebody had brought in vape pens. Now they're putting um, um, candy, they're tainting it, and it's drugs,
Sure.
but it looks like gummy bears, or it looks like, Lay's potato chips.
Hmm.
And that's how the cartel is bringing over a lot of things. We had a bust on a school bus that fentanyl was up under the seats.
Oh, wow.
We just had a bust here in Texas, $130 million worth of fentanyl in one stop. It was enough to kill 90 million people. That's 3 times the size of Texas.
Wow.
And no one's alarmed about this?
Yeah. And
That's
was that found out because of a canine?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
It was our canine that we have one officer, just one, that's taken over $1 billion by himself off the street.
Okay, wait. So explain this. So for most departments, could it be a bunch of different numbers? So maybe one department only has one canine,
Yes.
cop, duo. What do you call them, by the way?
The canine teams, they're
It's canine
just
teams. Okay, so they
Mhm.
might just have one officer and one canine, and then some teams, do they have five? I mean, how does it work?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes. So
it's all
like,
different sizes.
yes, Houston police probably has uh 40 canine teams.
Right.
And the sheriff's department again probably has 40. So
And
there's probably, with all the outlying smaller like constable units and marshal units and things like that, there's probably at least 200 canines just in Houston. And I'd say the majority of them are ours.
right. And okay, and so explain also the difference in their training, whether or not if they're a bomb sniffing dog, do they
Mhm.
get trained just for that? If they are,
Yes.
yeah, okay, so explain the difference and how they can, you have to sort of have one dog for one thing, I
Mhm.
guess.
So we have in this industry what's called a single purpose dog and a
Okay.
dual purpose dog. So a single purpose means they just have one job,
Mhm.
whether that's to go in and find firearms or drugs or whatever their discipline is. When it's dual purpose, that means that they are, in addition to that, a patrol dog, which
Okay.
means they can apprehend. We never use the word attack because, again, you wouldn't, if someone was trained, if if someone's a sniper and they're a Navy SEAL, you wouldn't say he's a part-time serial killer. No, I mean, this is what he's trained to do. So
Right.
these dogs aren't trained to attack. They're trained to do a job. And when you ask them to do said job, they do it. So that is a dual purpose dog. So one that
Okay.
apprehends plus either drugs or explosives are going to be your two main things. That one dog cannot do drugs and explosives because it's too many scents.
Mm.
That by the time that they got to court and they said, okay, what's your dog trained on? Well, it's trained to find cocaine and marijuana, but it happened to find this gun. Well, too bad, so sad. In other words, it's not trained for that, so that's probably going to get thrown out.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Okay. Like it was an accident. It
You
wasn't
right, you're right.
right.
So if they're just trained for firearms or explosives, that, and so basically it all starts out the same. They'll go through a basic handler course,
Mhm.
the officer and the dog.
And
And
and they usually, it's better if they're trained together, correct?
yes, well, a
Okay.
lot of most of the dogs that we get from our vendors, they'll go to Europe to get the dogs because, again, Belgian Malinois, German Shepherd. In other words, the breed was derived in Europe.
Oh,
And
I see.
so
Okay. So it's
So
not as easy as going to your local rescue.
no, oh, no, no,
It's
no,
just
no.
taking a dog that looks like they'll be aggressive and they'll go get
Yeah.
someone you want them to
And
get.
look,
Right.
when I'm not gonna lie, Rachel, when I first started this, I'm like, who's gonna play me in the movie when Disney makes this? And we're gonna go to the pounds, and I can't believe nobody's thought of this, and we're gonna get all the dogs that didn't have homes. And this is just gonna be, a warm, fuzzy, this is gonna be great.
Right.
Well, the problem is, I'm not saying that some of those dogs wouldn't or couldn't work out, and that you do see some stories about that, but they just don't know their backgrounds. So you're
Mm.
putting a lot of training and effort into a dog that maybe it makes it part of the way and it's obedient and it's got some drive. It wants to smell things. And then the first time it hears gunshots, it's like, oh, hell no, get me
Right.
out of here. I don't want any part of this. And then maybe that triggers something from their past that you don't know, adopting the dog, and that
Mhm.
they could have been abused, and then all of a sudden they turn.
Mhm.
This way, when we get these dogs, I mean, they're registered, they're titled, the majority of them. I mean, they you you get to walk through and a lot of these departments have had to what I call make do, anything that they can get up until now. But when they can walk through and you say, you get to pick the dog of your dreams.
Mm.
Here, you go to the Bentley dealership and you can pick what you want and what you need and what works with you. And if they don't feel comfortable choosing something, just, our officers will go there and will
Mhm.
help them, tell, this is what we're looking for. And they'll help them choose something to, because to asking me to do it in the very
Right.
beginning, I said, that's like me picking your girlfriend or your wife.
Right. It's like a
What?
chemistry thing. You have
Right,
to be in. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe an officer doesn't really says, I don't want a German Shepherd, I want a Belgian Malinois, or if it's a
Right.
single purpose dog, I rather have a golden retriever than a lab.